The deleted man. This one even creeps me out, and that is hard to do. You ever feel the air in a room just die? It doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow leak. A coldness that starts at the floorboards and works its way up your spine until your breath starts to hitch. Most folks think the dark is just empty space. They're wrong. The dark is a liquid. It's thick. It's heavy. It fills the lungs of the guilty until they can't scream, and it carries the weight of every secret you thought you buried under a pile of money and a clean suit. I'm Kay. Tonight we're looking at a man named Waldo. Now, Waldo wasn't always the extreme explorer you see on the billboards. Before the cameras, before the millions of followers, he was just a man with a mean streak and a talent for making people feel small. He's out here in the desert tonight for what he calls a spiritual reset. But we know why he's really here. He's here because the city got too loud. He's here because every time he closed his eyes in his glass-walled penthouse, he saw the face of a woman. A woman he'd broken in a drug-fueled rage. He used his father's money to buy the best lawyers, to shred the evidence, and to choke her with a settlement check until she dropped the charges. He thought a week under the stars would wash the copper taste of that night off his tongue. He thought the desert was empty. But the desert doesn't forget. And out here, there's no judge to bribe. The first night was quiet. Too quiet. Waldo sat by his fire, the orange light dancing off his expensive gear. He was bragging to his GoPro, telling his audience that the incident back home was just a misunderstanding, a distraction from his greatness. He was smiling, but if you looked close at his eyes, you could see the twitch. As he spoke, the flames didn't flicker. They didn't crackle. They just stood perfectly still, like they were made of jagged orange plastic. He went to bed feeling smug, but he woke up at 3 a.m. to a sound he couldn't explain. It was a wet, rhythmic slapping sound, like a palm hitting skin, over and over. He checked the tent. He was alone, but the smell was unmistakable. It smelled like the cheap perfume that woman wore. It smelled like the iron in a fresh bruise. By the second day, the heat should have been a hammer, but Waldo was shivering. He tried to drive his truck out of the canyon, but the engine just groaned and died. He looked at the digital display on his dashboard. It was scrambled, just a loop of white numbers flickering in the dark. The date of the assault. He started to walk, but the canyon walls seemed to be leaning in, narrowing the sky until it was just a thin, gray ribbon. Every time he stopped to catch his breath, he felt a sharp, stinging pain in his jaw, then his ribs. It wasn't a ghost hitting him. It was the air itself. Dark purple blossoms started appearing on his skin while he stood in the open sun. He was being beaten by the memory of his own hands. By the third night, Waldo wasn't a man anymore. He was a raw nerve. He sat in his tent, the high-tech fabric flapping like a dying wing. He turned on his camera monitor, desperate for the familiar glow of his own face. But the figure on the screen wasn't him. It was a thing wearing his clothes. It had his gear. Every time Waldo blinked, the monster was an inch closer. He tried to stay awake, but his eyelids felt like they were weighted with lead. He slipped into a fever, and that's when the walls of reality finally tore open.
Suddenly, Waldo wasn't in the desert. He was trapped in a small, dim apartment. He felt a jaw that had been shattered and wired shut. He felt the cold terror of hearing a heavy boot on a stairwell. He was living inside the woman he'd destroyed. He felt her hunger. He felt her shame. He felt the oily weight of the silence he had forced down her throat with a check. He screamed and clawed at his own face, desperate to wake up. He did awaken, gasping in the desert heat, only to find he was back in that dim apartment. Then he was in a courtroom where the judge's face was a mirror. Then he was back in the tent, looking at the monster's empty eyes. He was caught in a jagged loop of nightmares, a meat grinder of shifting realities where he was the victim in every single one. He didn't know which world was real because in all of them the pain was identical. The monster, the digital ghost of his own making, finally stepped onto his chest. It didn't strike him. It didn't have to. It just leaned down, its breath smelling of ozone and rotting meat, and pressed a cold, dead finger against his lips. The thing whispered, with Waldo's own voice, "You don't need this body anymore." He felt himself being pushed into the basement of his own mind, a muffled, screaming prisoner watching through his own eyes as the monster picked up the camera. He watched himself smile at the lens with a predator's grin. He watched himself start a new video for his millions of fans. He was a passenger in a suit of skin that no longer belonged to him. 3 days later, the news ran the story. A missing influencer. A truck abandoned in a canyon that felt like a graveyard. A tent standing perfectly upright, empty of everything but a single high-tech camera and a pile of gray human ash. They searched the caves. They searched the cliffs. But Waldo was never found. No tracks, no struggle. Just a man who was deleted from the world he tried to own. But here's the part that keeps me driving until the sun comes up. I'm Kay. I've seen the universe balance the books in ways that would turn your hair white. But this case? Even I don't know if the road I'm on is real anymore. Every time I look in my rearview mirror, I see a man who looks a lot like Waldo, standing on the shoulder of the road in the pitch black, holding a camera and filming me as I pass. Is he a ghost? Or is he the reason your phone just buzzed in your pocket?
The human mind is tricky, isn't it? It has this way of finishing an open-ended mystery much better than the truth ever could. What came for Waldo was greater than anything I've ever encountered. Something that takes you and doesn't give you back. A thing that reincarnates you into your own victim and endless loop of suffering. All sleep tight, kids. Until next time.